Silly season has officially started, and for those of you who might not know what silly season is, it is that time in the year in a Formula One season where drivers and teams are deciding what they want to do for next year, and contracts are being signed, people are getting fired and hired, and the media is trying to sell headlines, whether they are true or not. They don't care. And we have had our first couple of news bombs happening during the past 2 weeks, so let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome back. It has been a while. My laptop broke a couple months ago and I couldn't find a replacement until now. And there's only so much editing I can do on my phone before I go insane. So here we are, and what a time to be back. Now I want to start off going a little bit over what happened at Silverstone because everything stems from there. And Silverstone was a masterpiece of a race. I loved every single second of it. And Silverstone definitely showed why it's one of the crown jewels of Formula One. And it was just great overall. 10 out of 10 race for me. Max Verstappen took pole out of nowhere during qualifying, but it didn't really translate in the race. The McLarens were racing by themselves in front of everyone, very far away. Good for them. And we had every single type of strategy. We had great strategies from teams like Sauber. We had terrible strategies from teams like Mercedes. And we also had teams that were not even able to use their strategies, like Ferrari. Now, if you were wondering how Lewis Hamilton almost made it onto the podium and ended up 4th in the race, well, Ferrari lost his GPS. It stopped working in the middle of the race and they couldn't track him on the tracks, so they couldn't really strategize with him. And Lewis Hamilton did what Lewis Hamilton does and performed great on his own. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc, who was following Ferrari's strategies, was struggling back in 14th place and spun like 15 times. Now, the McLarens were very far away from the rest of the pack at the front of the grid, but they didn't escape the drama. Oscar Piastri got penalized with 10 seconds for a heavy brake after the restart of the safety car, and people have a lot of opinions about it. Do I think he should have gotten a penalty? Yes, I think what he did was completely stupid, especially in the conditions that the track was on, where no one could see anything and everyone was just sliding all over the place. But is 10 seconds a little bit excessive? Maybe. I have a little bit of a problem with the Formula One time penalties because I feel like the difference between a 5-second penalty and a 10-second penalty is quite big. With a 5-second penalty, you lose very few positions. With the 10-second penalty, you end up in the back of the grids. But I also don't think that putting another penalty in the middle would work because it would be like the middle popcorn size in the cinema. It just exists so that people will get the bigger one. All in all, I am glad I'm not a steward and I don't have to make these decisions myself. And in this case, I actually benefited from it because I got my home race win prediction, which was actually looking very dim given how good Oscar has been throughout the year, except in the Australian Grand Prix. Ultimately, Lando Norris got his first home Grand Prix, which I am really proud of him for. Oscar Piastri got 2nd place, which is no surprise, and Nico Hülkenberg got his first podium after 13 years, which is crazy. That was the best part of the race, and I think no one is going to disagree with that. And also, after this race, I am finally able to say bingo, because as I said before, I got my first home race win from Lando Norris, and I also got my 3rd race reign. And yes, I do count the Miami sprint race as a race. I know some people don't like to count the sprint races for some reason, maybe because they're shorter, but I am a firm believer that if you have the possibility of winning 1 point, then it counts as a race, because championships have been lost and won with 1 point difference, and everything counts. So I'm counting it. Obviously, I'm still going to be looking at my bingo card throughout the rest of the year and crossing things off. There are some things that I was actually expecting would have already happened, or I was really optimistic about, and now not so much. But you know, that's a Formula One season for you. Now, something that I wanted to point out is the fact that this podium from Hülkenberg is not a fluke. Obviously, everyone knows that Hulkenberg is an incredible driver himself, but what I mean by it's not a fluke, I'm talking mainly about Sauber as a team, because they have actually been on a upward trend this season. And since Nico was able to make it onto the podium, I wanted to do a little bit of a comparison between how Sauber is doing and how another team, Alpine, is doing. And you might be wondering, why Alpine? Well, because they have literally swapped places. And also they have some similar things going on their teams. Both teams have an experienced driver and a rookie, and both teams swapped team principals mid-season. But one was a little bit less controversial than the other one. Jonathan Wheatley took over the Sauber team principal role on the 1st of April of 2025, and his change was actually announced 1 month before it happened, which means that people were able to prepare for it. Wheatley is a former Red Bull sporting director with 6 constructors and 7 drivers' titles to his name, and he was also the chief mechanic in both Benetton and Renault. And with Audi preparing to fully take over the team in 2026, it makes sense that they wanted a new face to be leading the team, someone who actually has a lot of credentials in the sport. Now, Sauber is currently 6th in the Constructors' Championship, right behind Williams, and they have 41 points in the season. And last year, they ended up last with only 4 points, so they have made a huge improvement. And to be honest, with the way that Williams is performing right now, I wouldn't be surprised if Sauber ended up 5th in the championship, or maybe even 4th above Red Bull with everything that is happening right now. And yes, I know that most of the points came from Nico Hulkenberg going to the podium, but the fact that Sauber is performing so well with 2 drivers that have only joined the team this year, and with the way that they performed during the preseason testing, which was horrible, they are doing an incredible job. Now let's contrast that with Alpine, who last year ended the Constructors' Championship in 6th place, and this year is currently sitting at last. Alpine actually came into 2025 with optimism. I was really optimistic about what Alpine was going to do, given how well they did in the last couple of races last year, and also how well they performed during the preseason testing. Pierre Gasly actually even said in an interview during the preseason testing, "I'd be surprised if we look as bad as we did a year ago." Well, surprise, you're looking worse. You can clearly see that Sauber improved a lot after Spain, which makes sense given that most of their improvements came in Spain, and that includes their new floor. If we look at Gabriel Bortoleto, he finished above 14th in every single race after Spain, which is huge compared to his usual 18th finish in the rest of the year. And let's ignore the DNF at the end. I forgive him for that one because I thought every single driver was going to a DNF that race. But the improvement in the Sauber cars can be seen clearly in Hulkenberg's performance, who finished in the top 10th in every single race in Spain, which is very different to his 15th average the rest of the year. And now we move on to Alpine, and we start with Pierre Gasly, who seems to always be very, very close to the points, but just not close enough. He has scored a few points throughout the season, but they almost seem more like flukes than anything else. And he also has 2 DNFs, which both happened because he crashed into Yuki Tsunoda. I sense a pattern. The second Alpine seat is a little bit harder to read because we have 2 separate drivers who have only had 6 races each, and that is not a lot to go on. But something that caught my attention is that I thought Franco Colapinto was doing a lot worse than he actually is. In my head, I have all these images of him either crashing or his car not starting, but then I realized that most of those things happened during qualifying and not during the race themselves. Now, if you were to look at just his race performance, he is actually doing pretty good. His race pace is great, and he's actually been better than Pierre Gasly in quite a few occasions. He just sucks at qualifying. And in a season that is very reliant on qualifying, that is not good. Also, it doesn't help if your car doesn't start at all. Now, over the past couple of weeks, there have been a lot of rumors that Franco might get replaced by Valtteri Bottas, which I don't think is going to happen, at least not this year. And Briatore himself has said that Alpine is going to be sticking to the 2 drivers that they currently have for the rest of the year. And also Valtteri Bottas himself said that he had been in negotiations with Alpine since last year for 2026 specifically, not 2025. So if Franco's getting replaced, it will be next year. I personally just think that the media surrounding Alpine is vicious, and it doesn't matter if you're Franco Colapinto or if you're Jack Doohan. If you're doing something, you're doing it wrong. And let's be honest, everyone can see how terrible that car they're driving is. And that simulator that they're driving doesn't seem that great either, because if Jack Doohan thinks that he can make a turn without closing his DRS, there is a problem. And it's not the drivers, it's the car. In regards to Valtteri Bottas, I think that if he were to go into any team next year, I think it would probably be Cadillac. And if he were to go to Alpine, which I think it's a possibility as well, I don't think he will be replacing Franco, because I don't think that Briatore would want to get rid of him with the amount of money he spent on him and the amount of sponsors that he's bringing in. And I know that Pierre said that he was going to stay in Alpine and he was going to win with Alpine, but to be honest, if he gets the opportunity to leave and go to a better team, just take it. Now, I said a little bit earlier that Alpine had also switched team principals, and I'm not talking just about Oliver Oakes, which I talk about in a separate video, but right before Silverstone, Alpine brought in a new team principal. It just got sort of swept under the rug with everything that happened afterwards. A few days before Silverstone, Alpine brought in Steve Nielsen as their new managing director. He used to work at Lotus and run their spare parts department. He also was the sporting manager at Toro Rosso, and after that he also became the sporting director of Williams. Alpine also brought in Chris Midgley as their new head of aerodynamic development and Guy Martin as their new global marketing director. Now, I'm not the right person to say if someone is good at their job or not, but these people have a lot of experience in Formula One, so I can only guess that they know what they're doing, and this seems to be the right direction from Alpine. But then again, we said that at the beginning of the year. And speaking of leadership changes, let's talk about the most recent one. I didn't want to make a video on this sooner because I didn't want to jump the gun and make a video talking about things that will later be disproven. I'm trying to stay as far away from gossip and misinformation as possible, which is hard, but I wanted to let things settle down a little bit more before I spoke on this topic. Christian Horner was fired from his role as CEO and team principal of Red Bull. Am I surprised that it happened? Kind of. I'm surprised it actually didn't happen sooner. I thought he was going to get fired from his position very early in the year. And since it didn't happen early in the year, I thought they were going to just wait it out until December and say that with the new regulations, they needed a new change in leadership. I'm just surprised that it happened now. Now, Christian Horner is obviously a very controversial figure, especially after the allegations from last year, but he has done his job as team principal. Under his leadership, Red Bull won 6 team championships and 8 drivers' championships in the span of 20 years. Christian is getting replaced by Laurent Mekies, who is the former team principal of VCAB, and he in turn is going to get replaced by Alan Perman. Whether these changes are permanent, that is yet to be seen. According to Martin Brundle, Christian Horner himself was not given a reason as to why he was fired, and he was actually shocked by the news. He is still working at Red Bull. He has not been fired from the company itself. He still holds some sort of position, but no one is really sure what. He is still employed by Red Bull though. Now, the main thing that people are focusing on right now is not the firing of Christian Horner himself, but what is going to be the outcome of Red Bull now that he's gone. And there's 2 ideological camps in the situation, and here is where the rumors come in, so don't take my word for it. This is all alleged. Now, one group of people believes that Christian Horner was fired because he had an argument with Jos Verstappen and Jos doesn't like him, and he in turn asked Helmut Marko to fire Christian so that Max Verstappen would stay at Red Bull. And that now with Christian Horner gone, the Verstappens basically run the team, allegedly. The other side believes that Christian Horner was fired because he wasn't able to retain Max Verstappen as a driver for next year, because Max Verstappen allegedly signed with Mercedes. Now, when it comes to this whole Max going into Mercedes situation, I don't deny that I think it's very possible for it to happen, but at the same time, I think people are also grasping at straws to prove that this is happening, and that is something that I would be very careful with. There were a lot of rumors going around that Max and Toto had a secret meeting in Sardinia where Max signed the contract with Mercedes, but at the same time, some of the pictures that people were using to prove that Max and Toto were both at Sardinia were pictures where you can clearly see that the license plate is a Dutch license plate and that these pictures have been taken a few years ago in Zandvoort. And the other thing that people were using to prove this point is that both yachts were in Sardinia. Now, every single news outlet is saying that people tracked their yachts, but in no place was I able to find the original source of who tracked the yachts to Sardinia. Do with that information what you will. But also, this is what Sardinia looks like. It's a paradisiac island very close to Monaco. If I had a yacht docked in Monaco, this is a place where I would go on holidays to. And it wouldn't be the first time that two people who are in the Formula One surroundings went to the same place on holiday around the same time. I think it was in Drive to Survive that Zach Brown saw that someone from Formula One had gone to the same holiday destination that he had chosen, and he was hoping not to run into them. And also, I'm pretty sure a couple of Formula One drivers ran into each other on holidays. So the fact that they run in the same circles, live in the same country, both have private yachts, the fact that they're going to the same holiday destination, it's not very suspicious if you see how many times it has happened before. Now, I'm not saying that Max and Toto might not have gone to Sardinia to meet and sign a contract for Max to join the Formula One team of Mercedes or join the GT3 team of Mercedes, but I'm just saying I don't want to create rumors even if things actually end up happening. And who knows, maybe Max decides that he doesn't want to stay at Red Bull, but he also doesn't want to go to Mercedes and just takes up the mantle of Franz Hermann and goes into the World Endurance Championship. But whatever Max decides to do, I feel like the announcement of his decision is going to be the catalyst of the Formula One market going insane. I think there's quite a few drivers and quite a few teams that are just waiting on Max to make the announcement on whether he's staying at Red Bull, whether he's going to Mercedes, whether he's going to retire, to decide who to sign on for next year. You know, like George Russell, is he going to get replaced by Max Verstappen? Is he going to go to Aston Martin and become James Bond? Ultimately, I don't know what was the straw that broke the camel's back and ended up with the firing of Christian Horner, and we might actually never find out. But if it has something to do with Max's contract, I think we'll find out soon enough. But what will happen with Christian Horner? Because he is still technically being employed by Red Bull. Under what capacity, I'm not really sure. But there's also rumors going around that he is being sought after by quite a few teams on the grid, including Ferrari. And to be honest, with how Ferrari is performing, I wouldn't be very surprised if Fred Vasseur got kicked out for next year. If he's getting replaced by Christian Horner or not, that is something else, but I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple of weeks we got a new team principal change announcement. To sort of round up this whole situation, this seems to be the year to fire your team principal, whether that is looking forward to next year and the new regulations coming in, whether it is because your team isn't performing right or because there is some sort of scandal. There's still quite a few contracts that have to be announced. The second Red Bull seat is still empty for next year. Max Verstappen might also leave, so that's another seat. The two Racing Bulls are technically empty, although I think that Hadjar is definitely going to stay. At least I hope he stays, because he's been doing an incredible job at Racing Bulls. And I wouldn't be surprised if Lindblad came into Racing Bulls as well. And I will hope that both of those drivers get to stay at least a year in their seats before they get promoted to Red Bull itself. Obviously, both Mercedes seats are still empty and both Cadillac seats are empty as well. And I think all of the rookies only have a one-year contract, so let's see who gets to stay and who has to go. But this is all I've got for you guys today. What do you think about Christian Horner getting fired? Were you surprised? Were you not? Do you think Mikis is going to do a good job in improving Red Bull. What do you think the driver lineup is going to look like next year? Let me know everything down in the comments. And as always, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all on the next one.